Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's class from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 5, text 73 through 76. We're very fortunate this morning to have His Grace Balabhadra Prabhu from ISKCON Atlanta to give a class. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Accept our humble obeisances to go to Sri Prabhupada. It's all yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, my system was acting funny.
It sounds clear here.
Okay. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, so we're reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 5, text 73 to 76. Amsera amsaye kalataranam govindera pratimurti Sri Balaram. A part of a whole is called a kala. Sri Balaram is the counter form of Lord Govinda. Tandra Eka Sarupa Sri Mahasankashan Tandra Amsha Purushahai Kalate Ganan. Balaram's own expansion is called Mahasankarshan, and his fragment, the Purusha, is counted as Kala, as a Kala, or a part of a plenary portion. Okay. Yanha Keta Kala Kahi Tino Mahavishnu Mahapurus Shavatari Teno Sarva Jishnu. I say that this Kala is Mahavishnu. He is the Mahapurusha, who is the source of the other Purushas and who is all pervading. So this next one I'll chant, and then some of you can also chant. Garbodha Shirodha Shai Done Purushanam Se Dvi Yanra Amsha Vishnu Vishwadam. Someone else?
Garbodhana Shiro Garbodha Shiroda Sai Donhe Purushanam Sedui Janara Amsa Vishnu Vishwadam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Garbodha Shirodha Shai Dohe Purushanam Sedvijar Angsha Vishnu Vishwadham.
Haribo.
Garbodha Shirodha Shai Done Purushnam Se Dui Yanara Amsh Vishnu Vishwadham. Hare
Krishna.
Gava Hoda Roda Saida He Purusa Nama Sedu Yanra Amsa Vishnu Vishna Dham. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Okay. Word for word in translation. Garbo Uda, in the ocean known as Garbhodaka, within the universe. Shira Uda Shai, one who lies in the ocean of milk. Donhe, both of them. Purusha Nama, known as Purusha, Lord Vishnu. Say, those. Dwi, two. Yanra, Amsha, whose plenary portions, Vishnu, Vishnu Vishwadam, Lord Vishnu, the abode of the total universes. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Garbhodashayi and Shirodashayi are both called Purushas. They are plenary portions of Karanodashayi Vishnu, the first Purusha, who is the abode of all the universes. Purport. The symptoms of the Purusha are described in the Lagu Bhagavatamrita. While describing the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the author has quoted from the Vishnu Purana, 6859, where it is said, quote, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Purushottama, Lord Krishna, who is always free from the contamination of the six material qualities, whose plenary expansion Mahavishnu glances over matter to create the cosmic manifestation, who expands himself in various transcendental forms, all of which are one and the same, who is the master of all living entities, who is always free and liberated from the contamination of material energy, and who, when he appears in this material world, seems one of us, although he has an eternally spiritual, blissful, transcendental form," unquote. In summarizing this statement, Rupa Goswami has concluded that the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who acts in cooperation with the material energy, is called the Purusha. Om Agyanati Mirandasa Jananjanan Salakaya Chakshu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadab Mahayam Tadate Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Go Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in thinking about this subject matter that we just read in these few verses, I had some questions that we can discuss and try to get a better understanding. So one phrase that's mentioned here, let's see, which verse is it? I think it's the first one. Yeah. So in text 73, it says a part of a whole is called a kala. Sri Balaram is the counter form of Lord Govinda. Now, I know most of us have read this many times, and maybe you all have a better understanding than I have, but I was not clear on the phrase counter form. So I tried to look it up in the Vedabase, which is the first point of reference for me. But I couldn't find anything hardly, except for this particular verse. It kept coming up, that phrase, counterform. So I went to Google or somewhere to try to find some more information. And what I found, let's see, was counterform, and the actual phrase is pratimurti. So there's not much regarding that in researching it on Google. It said pratimurti is a Sanskrit term often associated with images or idols used in Hindu worship, murtis. It specifically means a corresponding form, image, or likeness. So I went down to the end of it. In essence, pratimurti, counterform, may highlight the importance of the relationship between the positive form, the deity's image, and the negative space counterform in a religious sculpture, potentially emphasizing the idea of manifestation, reflection, or representation in the material world. So that didn't clarify it 100% for me. That's why I'm hoping one of you might have some insight. Maybe you've read something, maybe you've studied something, but I'm still not 100% comfortable trying to explain what it means, counter form of Lord Govinda. Does anyone have any reflection, any thought, any experience with this phrase, counterform? Anyone there? Okay. So hopefully, yes, who is that?
That was me, but I'm hoping that maybe we should get up and we have some thoughts on it. And by the way, I apologize. I didn't even know you were on when I started repeating the text. Had I known you had gotten on, I wouldn't have called you out.
No, big deal. No, it's okay. It's really okay. Well, the only other thing, you did the search, Balabhadra Prabhu, in the internet. There's a lot of different meanings of Pratimurti. One is look-alike. But sometimes you think there's terrorism and counterterrorism. We hear a lot about that nowadays. So counterterrorism is against, but it doesn't look like that's the meaning. And I applaud you in saying I don't really know what it is. I don't either. Some stuff we don't. So yeah, but one of the meanings is look-alike, although it's not the same. It's a look-alike, but there's all these different expansions of Krishna, and so many different types. Ones that look alike with two arms, and of course he has a different bodily hue, and some have four arms, and so many different things. But I don't have much more to add. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no. It confirms to me what I'm thinking, which is a running theme in the discussion today. Thank you very much thank you for your honesty. That's the important thing. Anyone else? I see Sarvanga.
And Damodar, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes
Nice. My base was
for the devotees on the call. I also don't know much about it, but I have heard some quotations from Srila Prabhupada, where Prabhupada mentions that Krishna and Balram are the same, just their color is different. So that's I think somewhere related, I feel. So that's why I brought it up. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Preacher, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, God, you're powerful. So I also looked up Google dictionary to find the meaning of carniform. Being examples with the letters of the alphabet. And that got me thinking. They were talking about the space that is inside an alphabet. Sometimes it's fully enclosed, like O, the space inside O, like B, the space, it doesn't have to be round, but the space inside B is also closed in such letters. And they said, well, there's open too, like N. There's a space, but it has an opening.
Yeah.
H, but it also has an opening, even though it's space. So then, of course, I didn't care too much about spaces, but it was making a point about cuneiform being a space, which is part of the letter. Then I began to think, but Lord Balaram serves Krishna in so many ways. He's Ananta as the bed for Vishnu to be on. And in fact, in all the rasas, the 5 rasas, he's there. All 5 rasas. So to me, then cuneiform seemed to me like a complement to what Krishna wants to do. So that's what hit me after the Google dictionary started me off thinking. Because he serves that way. So yeah, and I couldn't find anywhere else. I also went on the database, it's not there, and only this verse has it. So that's where my mind ended up in accepting cuneiform in that way. Hare Krishna.
So it's interesting that even though we are reading, okay, Vishnu Prabhu, go ahead, you have some more?
Well, I wanted to hear what you were going to say before I say anything more. Come on.
Well, the train of thought that I'm having is based on this verse. Atashi Krishna Namadi Nabave Graham Indriyai Seva Mukhi Jivadal Swami Spiritual. And the way it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text number 8. In that verse, Jnana Vijnana Triptatma Kutasto Vijitendriya Yukta Udyuchate Yogi Samalastrashma Kanchana. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. Purport: book knowledge without realization of the supreme truth is useless. This is stated as follows. Ata Sri Krishna Namadi Nabave Grayam Indriyaye Sevanuke Hijivadao Swayam Eva Swarochada. No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Sri Krishna through the materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord are the transcendental name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So this other part in the purport is very, very interesting. This Bhagavad Gita is the science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious simply by mundane scholarship. One must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who is in pure consciousness. A Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna because he is satisfied with pure devotional service. By realized knowledge, one becomes perfect. By transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions. But by mere academic knowledge, one can be easily deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. It is the realized soul who is actually self-controlled because he is surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, which may be as good as gold to others, are of no greater value than pebbles or stones. So again, my thought on this is that it's beyond our understanding. We can, one phrase that I use is categorize. I mean, I could have given this class with a nice PowerPoint, all the incarnations and the names and what they are and so many different things. But to claim that I have a realization of that, experience of that would be, like I say, way above my pay grade. So then I would have to speak on it from a perspective of just repeating it, which is also is perfect, that we should repeat what we read in Prabhupada's books. But here the point about realization by realization. And realization is not something that we necessarily control or that we own, because it comes from Krishna. So in order to get realization of what we were just talking about, what is required? Because we're all confirming that we don't know much about this pratimurti or counterform. And there are many other things in Prabhupada's books that we sometimes just read past it, assume we know what it means, even English words sometimes. Like I was thinking of something about the understanding is predicated by the performance and quality of devotional service. But I thought I knew what predicated meant. That's why I used the word. But then I looked it up and it clarified, okay, that's what it means. So we read these things in Prabhupada's books. And then if we don't do what Srila Prabhupada said in the first purport of the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is we should study scrutinizingly with the help of a devotee of Krishna with no personally motivated interpretation. So sometimes we do that. We just interpret. So another thought that was going in my mind today and also last night is that how do we explain Krishna consciousness? To be more specific, when we're blessed and honored to give a talk, a class, or even a conversation with a devotee, what is our mood when we're doing that? Do we act in such a way as if we own the philosophy, or that we came up with the philosophy, or that this is something I know? Theoretically, I can know a lot of things. Practically, how much do I know? So the practical understanding of Krishna consciousness comes within the process of sadhana bhakti, devotional service, regular practice. But that regular practice has to be qualified, as it says in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, bhajatam priti purvakam, then dadami buddhi yogam. So that bhajatam priti, doing it with love, which sounds sentimental. All you need is love. We know that song from the Beatles. So sometimes, even I've heard devotees sometimes downplay when other religious people talk about love. And I very rarely hear devotees say to another devotee, I love you, Prabhu. I love, well, you don't, men don't say it to women, but the concept of love sometimes is downplayed. But even in a personal relationship with someone else, which Rupa Goswami gives us in the Nectar of Instruction, loving exchanges, Sadviti Priti Lakshanam, this loving exchanges, 6 kinds, loving. So then the exchange has to be loving, like Bhajitam Priti Purvakam, service with love. So the exchange between devotees has to be done with love. So then we have to go even deeper. What are the elements of love? What are the symptoms of love? Prabhupada said one time, love of Krishna means attention to chanting the holy name, attention to serving him. If you love someone, you pay attention to their needs, not personally your needs. You care about the other person's needs. So in order to get this, the Dhammi Buddha Yogam, in order to have these realizations, we have to go back a little bit and say, well, I need to improve my devotional service. And then Krishna will reveal. He's the intelligence of man. We're not independent even in our so-called thinking. The thinking is actually meant for Krishna. The mind should be engaged constantly in Krishna's service. Krishna's saying that in Bhagavad Gita so many places. Mamanad bhavamad bhakto majajimam namaskaru. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. So my conclusion on this phrase, counter form of the Lord, Pratimurti, is that in order for me to understand even deeper, because we did the research, I did a little bit, Pariksha did a little bit, we went to Google, I went to Vedabase trying to find some more understanding, but it wasn't there. So then I thought that, wait a minute, Srila Prabhupada has written the books in such a way that we have to make an effort to try to appreciate and understand the philosophy. But again, it's predicated on the quality of our devotional service. So if we really want to understand Krishna consciousness, we have to go back and check our devotional service. How do we check it? Well, how do we check to see if we're making advancement? Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, verses 8 through 12, Srila Prabhupada in the purport says, as far as spiritual advancement, one should make a test or have a test, and he can use the qualities mentioned in those verses to take that test. So again, it's so scientific. And I'm not a very, I don't have any previous education, no colleges and no degrees and all that, but some things are just simple. And over the years, beginning to realize that the more I read Srila Prabhupada's books carefully, in a time like this when I have to think about it and I have to say something about it, it's just there in the back of my mind. I don't know all the verses, but because of the reading, something comes into mind, like say a word, atha, like Atasi Krishna Namavi. So when I maybe can't remember that whole verse, but I remember that line. I remember what it kind of says, so I can look it up. Such a great advantage. We have database, we have so many, and just so much reference material. But if we don't read Prabhupada's books sufficiently, then the meditation won't be there. And those things won't be floating in our minds. And what will be floating in our minds are our speculations, our sense gratification, our trying to be recognized in society. Again, like Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, 8 through 12, first principle is humility. And the definition Srila Prabhupada gives, which is not a dictionary definition, is his definition, not being anxious for the satisfaction of being honored by others. So when we are in that mood, then we're just trying to represent Srila Prabhupada and understanding that we're not qualified by no stretch of the imagination, because knowledge comes from Krishna. Understanding comes from Krishna. So we have to constantly keep those things aligned in our thought process. That I have to depend on Krishna. That's why he says, Sarvadhamma Prijata, just surrender unto me. What does that mean? We need to have a big discussion on that. What does it mean? Well, we know what Rupa Goswami says. We know how Srila Prabhupada explained it, the different platforms of surrender. So that phrase, that pratimurti, that counterform, it's just so interesting. What it did for me is it caused me to stop and think. and realize how little I actually know. And now, when I project that onto trying to speak about the incarnations and the expansions, then I'm a little bit more humble to realize that I'm like Dr. Frog. We know that story of Dr. Frog or the frog in the well. It's like he has that limited experience of his life in the well. His friend went out on an excursion and he saw the ocean or the sea or even a river, many times bigger than the life they had been living, the experience they had. So then he tried to explain the expanded experience that he had. And his friend, with his limited experience, could not understand it because he's depending on that limited scope of his well. So the friend couldn't explain it because this person, the other one, the other frog, is just, he will not let go of his attachment to his little experience. So even amongst devotees, that little story resonates a lot because we see things based on our limited experience. This leads me to something that I really want to discuss today and get some feedback from all of you. That is that some devotees, and I've heard this recently, they will say things like, Srila Prabhupada, in the beginning, the devotees were not qualified. So what he did, this is what they're saying, not me. What Prabhupada did was he modified or he moderated the philosophy, brought it down so that these people could understand. Now, when you're giving a lecture, that's common sense. You try to speak, hopefully, to the level of your audience. I heard the other day that pastime with Prabhupada when he went to, I think it was a YMCA somewhere like that, and it was a bunch of kids, very young. And then Prabhupada, seeing what the group was, young kids, he asked them, who's intelligent amongst this group? I think one boy raised his hand, and Prabhupada asked him, what is that? And the boy says, my finger. What is that? My hand, my head. And then Prabhupada explained, it's the you, this is you're not the body. So he explained we're not the body in a way that the kids could understand. So when we're speaking, we try to do that. But let me take it back a step. Prabhupada absolutely, in speaking to the hippies, people coming there off drugs in the beginning, he spoke in such a way that they could understand. You should not speak in such a way to confuse people. You want to speak in such a way they can understand. And Chaitanya Charitamrita says, essential truth spoken concisely is true eloquence. So Prabhupada did that. But to accuse Prabhupada in a subtle way of being duplicitous in his spreading Krishna consciousness. Maybe I'm being a little rough on that phrase, but that's how it came to me. That Prabhupada did not explain all the deeper meanings because devotees could not understand. Excuse me. And I said to devotees, have you read Chaitanya Charitamrita? Have you read the postgraduate teachings of Lord Chaitanya? Have you read Nectar of Devotion carefully, or even Nectar of Instruction carefully? Because if you do, and if you did, you would realize that Srila Prabhupada gave everything. In fact, in Vishnu Godal, you can help me on this, but I heard it said that Prabhupada put everything in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Practically everything we need is right there. If we just take the time to relish, O thoughtful men and women, carefully Srimad Bhagavatam. So this idea that Srila Prabhupada held back information from us because we were not qualified to understand, maybe in the context of a lecture, like Prabhupada did not talk about the intimate pastimes of Radha Krishna in a lecture, public lecture. Mainly in the public lecture, you're not that body, or sometimes about the Varnashram system, just basic things in Krishna consciousness, but his books. So devotees say like that to justify reading the books of the other acharyas. And I'm not opposed to that because Prabhupada mentions in different places in his books, the books of this Goswami, books of that Goswami, he mentioned even here. So that's fine. But my simple analysis is Prabhupada gave us his books with the purports and explanations. I'm very uncomfortable with devotees going back to the previous acharyas without the guidance of Srila Prabhupada and giving their interpretation of what the acharyas meant. Very specific in my mind. Giving an interpretation, reading the books without Prabhupada's purport or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's purports, which I have one here that we'll read in a minute, and then giving an interpretation, because our interpretations are filtered through our limitations. And what are those limitations? Well, the quality of our devotional service, because the realization of this knowledge is based on the quality of our devotional service, unless we think we're the controller, that just by erudition, just by scholarship, I will understand all these things. And when Krishna says it's not by that, and Prabhupada just said it, it's not by that. It's by the quality of our devotional service. So it just made me think about how limited I am, and however you all want to think in terms of trying to explain these very intimate, and in this case, it's not necessarily intimate, this counterform. It's just technical, trying to explain that without the experience. So then it brought me to the conclusive understanding, which I'm going to bring up another question, which is Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, text 34. Tat vidi pranipatena ripasnena sevaya upatekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattadarshana. Translation. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So here's another thing I want to ask and put on the table. What does it mean, seeing the truth? Because it says here, what is that? Jnaninas tattadarshana. Tattva of the truth, darshana, seer. So what does that mean? That he has seen the truth. It didn't say that he heard the truth. It said that he has seen the truth. So I'm going to put that out. Does anyone have any understanding, reflection, thoughts about that phrase alone? Seen the truth, what that really means. Anyone? Vishnu Udapu, you want to bless us with some understanding on that?
I don't know what blessing. That, well, the Srila Prabhupada would often say to devotees that in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles, chanting 16 rounds, and in this life, you will see Krishna face to face. He said that many times. So that's one way to understand that phrase. And just because it's one way to understand it doesn't mean there are other ways it might not be understood. But of course, also, Srila Prabhupada would often say it's important to see with the eyes of the Shastra,
Yes.
Shastra Chakshus. So is it with, not with the peacock feather eyes, he would sometimes say, but with the eyes of Shastra. So he's seen through the eyes of Shastra what is the transcendental position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who we are, what is the process of devotional service, what is Maya, all those things through the eyes of Scripture. And that, sometimes Prabhupada would say, that is realized knowledge. The Scriptures that is realized knowledge. And then another step is that for us to actually understand it and realize it ourselves, but that Scripture itself is realized knowledge. Does that make sense?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely makes sense. Anyone else? Seen the truth.
I remember some part of Shastra where Sri Prabhupada comments that we don't have, as it says in Brahma Samhita, we don't have the eyes tinged with the salve of love to how to see, even referring to the deity. But he has mentioned that we have to see with our ears. He's mentioned that also, which means we have to hear and experience Krishna through hearing. That's how it came across to me, like that. And so if we take that to the Guru, It is possible that Krishna will reveal himself to gurus, literally face to face, like Srila Prabhupada said. What the gurus talk about is usually from the scriptures, the realized knowledge from the scriptures. So then, in that sense, they are seeing Krishna with their ears also.
Yeah.
What they've heard. That's all I wanted to add to it. Hare Krishna.
And that with the ears, Shravanam, first principle, Shravanam, hearing. And that's what I was trying to say earlier, that by the practice of hearing sufficiently, that means pretty much constantly, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, just always chanting my glories, constantly. And what's happened in my personal life is that all the things I'm reading are floating around in my brain, okay? So when I need them, I can just pull it down. And as I said, I may not have the entire verse or the entire pastime, but I have snippets of it, little small pieces floating around. Then I pull it back, then I do some research in database. If I only know one syllable in a verse that I've read, but I want that verse, I put that syllable and I find it. Like last night, I couldn't sleep because I'm looking for these different words. I was like thinking about it. But how blessed am I to spend my time nicely trying to understand what Prabhupada's saying instead of assuming I know it. And then when speaking with all of that authoritative, bigger motion, facial, voice, all those things. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying that we have to be so careful. I one time told a devotee, I heard him give his first lecture, and I called him the next day out of love. I said, Prabhu, you have to be careful how you're speaking, the way you're moving, everything about it, because others are watching you and they will try to imitate you. Yat yada charti shrestha, whatever great men do, common men follow. So I'm thinking, how did Prabhupada speak? Because in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked Krishna, someone who's transcendental in consciousness, how does he speak? How does he walk? How does he sit? I mean, think about it. How does he sit? What does that got to do with anything? But how does he speak? So then we look at Srila Prabhupada. He is our example. We didn't see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta speak. They have this one movie, they say it's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, but that's controversial. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaurkishore Das Babaji, Haridas Thakur, even Lord Chaitanya, we didn't see them. But now we're seeing, as you just pointed out, Parikshit, with our ears, we're seeing the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. It's amazing. We can hear, which is practically the same as you're saying, like seeing it, appreciating it. So when we're speaking, we have to almost detach ourselves from what we're saying to realize it's not us. If we say it nicely with the reference to Srila Prabhupada and reference to the Acharyas as Srila Prabhupada has revealed them, not jumping too far beyond Srila Prabhupada, bringing in the Acharyas and then giving your interpretation of what they said or did. Okay, that's a little bit questionable, at least to me. I'm not sure about everyone else. So then we think, how did Prabhupada do it? Vishnu Prabhu one time, he had this idea of like the Christians have that little wristband. What would Jesus do? Or what would Jesus say? So he thought, what would Prabhupada do? Or what would Prabhupada say? So that is Shastra Chakshusha, Guru Shastra Sadhu. We don't do anything that we can't confirm that was ordained or blessed by Srila Prabhupada. We have to be so careful. Otherwise, the path that we go down could be a path of speculation, interpretation, which Prabhupada, in his first couple of sentences of the first chapter, first verse of Bhagavad Gita, studied with the help of a devotee without personally motivated interpretations. So that means we have to carefully look at what's being said here. Carefully look at that. So thank you all for participating in that discussion, both discussions, seeing the truth and counterform. So any other reflections on the phrase, seen the truth? It's directly from the verse itself. Because he has seen the truth. In other words, you serve that spiritual master, humility, with attention. Why? Because he has seen the truth and he can guide you, reveal to you, help you to understand the truth. Then you have to say, what is the truth? And we know the truth is ultimately Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his divine realm of the spiritual world. So any other reflections on that phrase? Otherwise, there's a couple of more things I wanted to cover real quick. So, yeah, in the purport to 76, it says, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Purushottam, Lord Krishna, who is always free from the contamination of the 6 material qualities. And just as a reference, the 6 material qualities are hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, death. We're not free from those. But here is saying, where it is said, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Purushottam, Lord Krishna, who was always free from those 6 things. Hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age. But we are constantly being affected by hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. So how is it possible that we can give conclusive knowledge separate from the scriptures as explained by primarily Srila Prabhupada? Everything else that's being explained, every other book that's going to be written or has been written by Prabhupada's disciples and disciples of disciples have to be reflections of what you understand that Prabhupada said. And as Vishnu Gudad pointed out, your understanding may not even be 100% on point because it's predicated by the quality of your devotional service. So if your devotional service is not up to standard, your realizations will be limited at best, but still, partially correct, but not fully, because it's not realized knowledge. Jnana Vijnana. Jnana Vijnana. Actually, that verse was Jnana Vijnana Triptatma, Bhagavad Gita. So keeping all that in perspective, it's like a juggling act. I mean, our day is like a juggling act, trying to keep Krishna in the center while dealing with all these other things and distractions and the 6 material qualities and the threefold miseries. Oh, there's so many things. But if we can stay focused, keep the mind focused, man manad bhava bhakto, in devotional service, then we get the realizations that are required to sustain our devotional service. So to finish up my part of the discussion, hopefully we'll have some more input. I was reflecting, as I just explained to you, things float around in my mind, and I try to pull them down. The number of the verse, where is it? And what it says exactly. So I was thinking that the essence of all advice. So obviously that's from the Nectar of Instruction, verse number 8. Tanama rupa charitadi sukirtanandu smityo kramena rasanama nasini yoja tistan vrajeta anuragi jananugami kalam nayeda kilam it upadesha sharam. You looking it up? I'll wait for you.
Yes. Nectar of Instruction.
Nectar of Instruction, verse 8. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a really lovely, lovely verse, if I'm allowed to say the word lovely.
It is lovely.
The translation is, the essence of all advice, because I want to give you some advice. Hey, look at me, Balabhadra. I'm going to give you some advice. You don't want my advice. Of course, I try my best. But the essence of all advice that I can give you, that Vishnu Gudad can give you, that Parikshit can give you, that any devotee can give you, all the ISKCON gurus present and past can give you, all the disciples of Prabhupada can give you, all the future disciples can give you, all the acharyas can give you, because this is a big acharya for us, Rupa Goswami. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braja Goloka Vrindavan Dham and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Quickly in the purport. The Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for training the mind to be always engaged in Krishna's business. Wow. So I mentioned to you earlier that there was this purport from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, some comments in this same text number 8 purport. And Srila Prabhupada says, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented as follows upon this verse. One who has not yet developed interest in Krishna consciousness should give up all material motives and train his mind by following the progressive regulative principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna and his name, form, qualities, pastimes, and so forth. In this way, after developing a taste for such things, one should try to live in Vrindavan and pass his time constantly remembering Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, and qualities under the direction and protection of an expert devotee. This is the sum and substance of all instruction regarding the cultivation of devotional service. And then lastly, from the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, text number 3. First canto, first chapter, text 3. You're really fast, Pariksha Prabhu. That's good. Yeah. Okay. Nigama kalpatoro galitam phalam sukha mukha amrita dravya samyutam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavika. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So look at that in nice instruction. Oh, expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam. So we can relish the Bhagavatam. Reading it, hearing it. We have recordings of it. We have the Srila Prabhupada's physical books, but we have to take advantage. One time Prabhupada said to the devotees on Sankirtan, the Sankirtan devotees, he asked them, what are you saying on Sankirtan? And the devotees gave their, normal response. We talk about yoga, we talk about vegetarianism, And Prabhupada said, you don't read my books? You're not explaining the philosophy? Some devotees say, well, you don't have time on Sankirtan. You just got to get the books out, get the donations in, just do. Okay, fine. Okay, that's fine. But that person that you meet, this might be the only chance in their entire life, in past lives, even future lives, that they can hear about Krishna. You didn't even say anything about Krishna. You just talked about yoga. What the heck is yoga going to do when you know in Bhagavad Gita 647, yogi namapi sarvesham, makatenantaratmana, shadavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamomata. And of all yogis, one who abides in me with great faith. So we should bring people to the highest level. We can tell them, yes, it's about yoga, but guess what is yoga? The different kinds, but bhakti yoga. So then you can say yoga, but we teach a very unique form of yoga. It's the yoga of devotion. How long did it take to say that? It took a couple of seconds, and you gave that person something. And in this bhakti yoga, the highest thing that we can do is to glorify the Lord by his names. And one of the names, the most important name according to the ancient scriptures of the Vedic culture, is the name Krishna. Doesn't take much time to do that. So if we do like that, really try to relish the Bhagavatam, and then share that relish with whoever we come in contact with, Yare Deke Tare Kara Krishna Upadesh. We try to share what we're relishing. Actually, what I was trained in Sankirtan in the beginning. My temple president, I asked him specifically, could I be trained by Tripurari? At that time, he was not a Swami, it's just Tripurari. And my temple president, in his infinite wisdom, said, no, you go and speak what you hear in the class. Whatever you're learning, you go and you do that. So that was my style of doing Sankirtan. Whatever I heard in the class that morning, combined with what's happening in the world, I would talk about that. So another devotee once said, going on Sankirtan is like giving little small Bhagavatam classes all day long. You think about that. I mean, everybody wants to give the class. Everybody wants to, name on the thing and all that stuff. You can give class all day just by talking about Krishna. Yare Deke, Tare Kaha, Krishna Upadesh. And In that way, you become guru. Who? Any one of us. It's not a question of rubber stamp guru, or do you have to go through this process, that process, be guru? No. Whomever you meet, Lord Chaitanya didn't qualify by any other statement. Whomever you meet, in this way you become guru. The person who introduced me first was a bhakta that just come to Atlanta from New York, Vaishnavananda Prabhu now. Bhakta, walking on the street. That contact, it was the initial contact with a devotee. And 50 something years later, I'm still here because of that initial contact with someone who's not even initiated. Why? Because he was following Srila Prabhupada. And guess what he gave me? He gave me that little book, Reservoir of Pleasure, with Krishna on the front. Oh my God, how special. So like that, we absorb ourselves, O thoughtful men and women, relishing Srimad Bhagavatam, essence of all advice, spend our time 24 hours a day nicely hearing. And I'll tell you from my own personal experience, it will be there when you need it. When you need it to represent Prabhupada and say something, it's there because you've been hearing constantly. It's floating in your mind. Manmana Bhavamad Bhakto. Why constantly hearing? So that it'll be there. And at the final moment, Yam Yam Vapi Smaram Bhavam Tajanti Hikalevam. It will be there for us. Remembering Krishna. If we're lucky, if we're blessed. But Krishna says, don't worry about it. Just surrender unto me. I will protect you. So all these things lead up, and they're all scientific. They're all connected to the quality of our devotional service. So I will stop with that. Hopefully there's some additional comments, questions, corrections, reflections.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Very nice lecture that you engaged us right from the beginning. And now we are at a point where, so many references that are so relevant to our lives. It's nice to remind us what Krishna consciousness is about and what we have to do. So, dear devotees, if you want to make some more comments or ask questions, we have a few minutes before 9 o'clock. You can definitely do that. Just unmute yourself and go for it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anything that you want to, even if it's not related directly to the verse, but it's something on your mind and you want to clear that, you definitely can. We're open to discussion. Vishnugadam Prabhu, please go ahead.
Thank you. I was just remembering, when Prabhu, Balabhadra Prabhu, when you started the class, you were asking us questions. And, there's the verse in this first part of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first part of the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Sukadev Goswami arrives there at Maharaj Parikshit. Variyan Eshate Prashna Krito Loka Hitam Nipa. And Srila Prabhupada gave class on that many times, but he glorified Maharaj Parikshit's questions.
Yes.
Because those questions, he said, Krito Loka Hitam Nipa, they're beneficial for the whole world. Atmavit Sammata Pumsam. And they're appreciated by those people who are spiritually advanced. So you ask those questions, and as soon as you ask questions, then so many ideas and thoughts come up about Krishna. It inspires us to think more and more about Krishna and the philosophy and devotional service. I thought that was really helpful. And you mentioned, and of course, the Srimad Bhagavatam is all, there's questions by the sages. It starts it off, and there's questions. Maharaj Parikshit asks questions again and again. So this conversation. It's not just one way. Then you mentioned about sometimes people quote other sources of knowledge other than Srila Prabhupada's books, or no, you said that they say that Prabhupada dumbed it. These are my words.
That's a good word. Yeah.
Dumbed it down.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I don't know if there's any relation, but Krishna is the super soul in everyone's heart. And what happens when a person who's the soul is in a human body goes into the body of a whale is the same size of super soul? You follow?
Yeah.
Or the Ksharadakshai Vishnu is also within the atom, in between the atoms, very smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest. It's the same Krishna. So the truth that's given can be seemingly very small or very huge, but it's the same truth. It's not some other truth. I'm relating that to, the philosophy that was encapsulated by Srila Prabhupada, even when it's presented for a young audience or any kind of audience, it's still the same truth.
Yes.
Like Krishna's. Yeah. And then the last thought I had was back to the Pratimurti. And then Sarvanga Sundara said, oh, Krishna and Balaram are the same, just a different color. And I was thinking about that just briefly because, but on the other hand, we say that there's 4 things that only Lord Krishna has that nobody else has. What is that?
Beauty.
Childhood pastimes,
Incomparable beauty.
And he plays his flute.
Plays his flute.
Yeah.
And is surrounded by devotees endowed with wonderful love of Godhead, right?
Yes.
Well, so if we take Sarvanga Sundara's Prabhu's statement, does that mean that Lord Balaram has all those 4 qualities too?
Well, from my limited understanding, reflecting on that, that's explained as 64 qualities.
Yes.
And 50 qualities, any living being can have up to that 50 qualities, it's different degrees. Then was it 5 more that others can have, and then 5
Lord
more.
Shiva.
Lord Shiva, and then 5 more, which the different incarnations can have. But then those 4, from my understanding, are exclusive to Krishna. It doesn't mention Balaram. It means Krishna.
I hear what you're saying, but I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
Balaram has a rasa dance.
Yeah.
Balaram, during that rasa dance, before the rasa dance, he plays a flute. And he's surrounded by devotees who have wonderful, so the wonderful love of God, it means all those 5 rasas. Yeah. So he's got cowherd boys, and like when Lord Nityananda came, he's got those cowherd boys with him that came. Yeah. And the only one that might be somewhat, but if we say that Krishna and Balaram are the same, except that he's white and Balaram's shyam color, I'm just reflecting on the Pratimurti, because when Krishna expands to Vasudeva or Vishnu, that's not the same. But anyway, I'm just putting that out there. You understand what I'm?
Oh no,
saying.
I think it's a very valid observation.
So in that sense, if that would be how we understand that, that's something unique with Lord Balaram.
Yeah,
that he's a Pratimurti, as opposed to all the other Vishnu forms.
Well, going to the verse itself where it mentions that, let's look at it again. A part of a whole is called Kala. Shri Balaram is the counter form of Lord Govinda. That's why that word is so important, counter form. I'm still not clear 100% on it, because from what you just explained, could be brought into the conclusion. My only caution is that Prabhupada never said it like that.
Never said it directly, yes.
Yeah, but there's, I mentioned this the other day, that Prabhupada mentioned that we should be like scientists, and scientists do their individual experiments and research. Then they come together with their papers and their research and their presentations, and they try to find, some conclusion. So we're kind of like that we can study Prabhupada's books, have some understanding, and then in a non-judgmental environment, like right now, we can share those thoughts without being critical, without condemning. So I appreciate that perspective, Vishnuvedant, Prabhu, and I'll see if something dawns in my heart, I can find something more, but it makes a lot of sense. It really does, based on how you just explained it. Very nice.
And that was prompted by Sarvanga Sundara Prabhu's observation and question.
Yeah.
And I never thought about that before. Oh, what about that? I never thought about it.
And what about that? This is interesting. I never thought about that before. Krishna just revealed it. He gives these thoughts and ideas. And then what we have to do when they come, Guru Shastra Sadhu. We get some realization, we get some thought. Now we have to confirm it. So our duty as part of this discussion today, based on what Sarvanga Prabhu presented and what Vishnu Gudai elaborated on, let's try to do a little more study. studying Prabhupada's books should be, it is, and should be the joy of our life. As Vishnudev pointed out, what Prabhu had said, Sarvanga Prabhu had said, spurred something else. Maybe something I said spurred something else. Maybe something you might say spurred something else. A really quick example, a Sankirtan devotee example. We were at the end of our Sankirtan week years ago. There was Swabhas Prabhu, Nakatma Prabhu, me, and a couple of other devotees. On Saturday, we would take a break halfway through Sankirtan, come back to the temple, and we would sit down and take a big prasadam lunch and read together. So one day we were reading, and one word came out, the word tantamount. And none of us knew what it really meant. But we knew it was significant because it was in the verse or in the purport. Prabhupada said, such and such is tantamount to such and such. And we spent the afternoon trying, because we didn't have the internet, no database. So we had to basically dictionary this and that, trying to figure out the word tantamount. But it kept us absorbed in Krishna consciousness for the whole afternoon. We're not thinking about eating, sleeping, mating, defending. I don't like this one. I don't agree with that. It was just trying to understand one word that Prabhupada used. So my charge to all of us in the movement now is that we spend so much time over analyzing this person's motive and this thing and that thing, generally speaking, sometimes out of context to your own personal spiritual life. We should spend more time, as Rupa Goswami said, the essence of all advice is to spend our time nicely hearing and glorifying and chanting the Lord's holy names. So thank you, Vishnu Gudapu. That's a great inspiration to think deeply about those things. So thank you very much.
I'm thinking one thing. As you
I see you thinking. I see on your face you're thinking.
One thing about counterform.
Mm.
And of course, that was used to describe Balaram. And then my mind says, well, actually, maybe two words.
Mm.
The form of Krishna, that's a counterpart to the Lord. That's what came to my mind. Just the counterpart to the Lord. And that really describes Balaram in so many ways. In the assistance of Krishna, in service to Krishna. The counterpart to Krishna. Maybe that's the way he put it together. Again, I'm speculating, but I liked it when it came in my mind that way. That's why I decided to put it out. Maybe because for me, many things are becoming acceptable about Balaram by just thinking of him as a form of a Lord that's a counterpart.
Mm.
Because in all his pastimes, he's there. So that's why it's when the Lord is sleeping, he's there. You know, he's the bed, the bed, like that. I'm forgetting my words, but yeah, he's in assistance. So then I went back to, that's what made me think this whole thing in the Google dictionary, that the word is, I took the letter O and I said the space between, this is how they define it, the area. Then I thought, yeah, but it's that particular area that makes the letter form like that. You just can't have space and get O from space. You have to have the area is a circle. Then around the circle, the letter is formed. So Bala makes it happen for Krishna.
Yeah.
He makes it happen for Krishna. So then, in so many ways, he really makes it happen in all the pastimes. You can't say that without Balaram, they can't be Krishna. That's not possible because they are all together. They go together, yeah. But then, as far as the roles that Balaram is playing, he makes these pastimes together. He really does. So you think of each pastime where Balaram is part of, he really is assisting Krishna like that.
Yeah.
So maybe he's a counterpart. The form is a counterpart of the Lord. That's the last thing that came to mind.
something to think about. It gives us some flavor for today. I mean, it just kept me going yesterday, like counterpoint. What is this word? But instead of being concerned, like, my health is not perfect, my income is zero, and all that kind of stuff, I'm thinking counterpoint. What does that really mean? And it brought joy. And just this discussion today has given me so much joy That just so now what you're just saying, Parishit, is giving me the thought that this should inspire us to go back and study more about Balaram, to try to understand a little more, and to serve the Lord with more devotion, because we're struggling trying to understand. We should reflect that struggling to understand means Krishna hasn't given it to us yet. Vishnu Gadar just said, a thought came to him. That thought coming to him or me or you is Krishna.
Yes.
So we don't stop the devotional service, and we focus in on improving the quality of the devotional service, starting with chanting our rounds attentively as much as we possibly can. Then Dadami Buddhi Yogam, this understanding how to come to Krishna, will come to us. He's in the heart. He's the source of knowledge, forgetfulness, and remembrance. He's just waiting. Just chant my name with devotion, faith. That's it. Anyway, and relish, O thoughtful men and women, Srimad Bhagavatam. Read it, study it.
Okay. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful lecture with so much discussion in it. That makes it really, really sweet and spicy. Spiritually spicy. Very good. So, thank you, Baba Prabhu. Thank you, Vishnugadar Prabhu. Thank you, everybody that contributed and those that came to hear, even if they didn't say anything. But you make it all happen. So, have a nice, wonderful Krishna conscious day. Vancha kalpataru
Vasya Vipassandhu Bhadevacha Patitanam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Haribo. Glory to Prabhupada.